My mother left a cold note telling me to get out and never come back. She had no idea that months later, she would be begging for mercy at the golden gates of my massive luxury estate. If you love emotional stories of family betrayal, satisfying endings, and seeing true justice served, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next videos. I have always believed that life has a beautiful, poetic way of balancing the scales of justice. Those who treat others like disposable objects eventually find themselves discarded by the very world they tried so hard to impress. In the sun-drenched region of Seville, Spain, where historic white-walled villages stand amidst endless fields of silver olive trees, I spent my youth learning the value of hard work, silence, and resilience. My name is Isabella, and for 26 years, I lived under the suffocating shadow of a family that only valued people based on their material wealth and social standing. My mother, Sophia, was a cold, status-obsessed woman who spent her days gossiping with the wealthy ladies of Seville, pretending to live a life of high society that we simply could not afford. My younger sister Clara was her absolute pride and joy, a spoiled, lazy girl who was given everything she ever wanted on a silver platter, while I was treated as nothing more than a background shadow, a convenient servant whose only purpose was to work and support their endless vanity. My father had passed away when I was only 10 years old, leaving us with a modest family home in the outskirts of Seville and a small pension. From that moment on, my mother made it clear that Clara was the chosen one, the golden child who was destined to marry a rich nobleman and elevate the family name. I, on the other hand, was expected to work. I started working at a local agricultural cooperative at the age of 16, waking up before dawn to manage the accounts and oversee the harvesting of olives under the blistering Andalusian sun. I didn't complain. I used the quiet strength my father had instilled in me to focus on my education and my career. While my mother and sister spent my hard-earned money on expensive designer clothes, makeup, and lavish dinners to maintain their fake high society image, I quietly saved every single euro I could, investing in agricultural stocks and learning the intricate secrets of the international olive oil market. Over the years, my quiet investments and tireless work paid off in ways my family could never even dream of. By the age of 25, I had secretly become one of the most successful, independent agricultural consultants in southern Spain. I managed massive distribution contracts for major distributors across Europe and North America, but I kept my financial success a complete secret. I knew my mother and sister too well. If they ever discovered how much money I was making, they would have drained my accounts within days, using emotional guilt and manipulation to strip me of everything I had worked so hard to build. So I continued to live in our modest family home, wearing simple clothes, driving an old, beat-up utility vehicle, and allowing them to believe that I was just a low-level office clerk earning a miserable salary. The true test of their cruelty came on a cold, rainy morning in November. For months, Clara had been dating a wealthy young man named Hugo, whose family owned a chain of boutique hotels in Madrid. Desperate to impress Hugo's family and secure a marriage proposal, my mother and Clara decided they needed to move to a luxurious, high-end apartment in the center of Seville, but they didn't have the money to buy it. Without telling me a single word, Sophia put our family home, the very house my father had built with his own hands, the house where all my childhood memories lived, up for sale. They found a buyer quickly, a greedy developer who wanted to demolish the historic structure to build modern townhouses. On that decisive Tuesday, I returned home from a long, exhausting 3-day business trip to the northern province of Jaén. I was tired, my bones ached from the journey, and I was looking forward to nothing more than a warm shower and a quiet night in my bedroom. But when I unlocked the front door, my heart froze. The house was completely empty. The beautiful wooden furniture my father had carved was gone. My books, my drawings, and my personal belongings were packed into a few cardboard boxes stacked carelessly in the middle of the dusty living room. The rest of the house was a barren wasteland of empty walls and echoing footsteps. I walked into the kitchen, my hands trembling with a sudden, suffocating panic. There, sitting in the middle of the bare kitchen counter, was a single cold, white envelope. I opened it with shaking fingers and pulled out a handwritten note from my mother. The words were written in her elegant, flowing handwriting, but they were sharper than any dagger. The note read, "Isabella, we are selling the house and moving into a beautiful new apartment in the city center with Clara and Hugo. There is no room for you there, and frankly, your simple, low-class lifestyle would only embarrass Clara in front of her new wealthy family. You are not really part of our future. Don't try to look for us or come back. We are going on without you. Get out and find your own way." I stood in that empty, silent kitchen for a long time, holding the cruel paper as the cold rain of Seville tapped against the windowpane. I looked at the boxes containing my life's few personal belongings, which they had left behind like trash. But as I stared at the note, I didn't shed a single tear of sadness. Instead, a wave of profound, liberating peace washed over me. The chains of emotional abuse and manipulation that had bound me to them for my entire life were suddenly broken. They had discarded me, thinking they were leaving me homeless and broken on the streets. They believed that a simple girl with nothing but a suitcase would crumble in the cold, but they had no idea who I really was. I picked up my phone and called David, my trusted attorney and financial manager. Within 30 minutes, a luxury black SUV arrived at the empty house. The driver, a polite man named Mateo, helped me load my boxes into the trunk with the utmost respect. I got into the comfortable leather back seat and looked out the window as we drove away from the old neighborhood. We weren't heading to some cheap, damp rental apartment. We were driving toward the majestic Andalusian hills, toward Hacienda de la Emperatriz, a historic, breathtaking 500-acre luxury estate that I had quietly purchased and restored to its full glory over the past 2 years. The estate was a masterpiece of Spanish architecture, featuring a grand white-walled mansion with terracotta roofs, magnificent courtyards filled with blooming jasmine, private stables housing beautiful Andalusian horses, and a state-of-the-art olive oil mill that produced some of the most exclusive organic olive oil in the country. The property was guarded by massive, ornate golden iron gates and a highly professional security team. For the past 2 years, I had managed this paradise from afar, but now, it was time for me to step into my rightful place as the sole mistress of the estate. When Mateo drove the vehicle through the Golden Gates, the entire staff, over 30 loyal employees, including housekeepers, gardeners, and security guards, stood in a neat line, bowing respectfully to welcome me home. I was finally free, surrounded by beauty, respect, and a peace I had never known. 6 months passed, and life at the hacienda was nothing short of a dream. Under my personal management, Hacienda de la Emperatriz won the gold medal at the International Olive Oil Awards, skyrocketing our profits and cementing my position as one of the most powerful businesswomen in southern Spain. Meanwhile, in the city center of Seville, my mother and sister's elaborate house of cards was beginning to collapse. Clara's wealthy fiancé, Hugo, turned out to be a complete fraud. His family's hotel business was on the verge of bankruptcy, and he had only been dating Clara because he believed my mother's lies that our family possessed a secret, massive inheritance. When Hugo's family discovered the truth, that Sophia and Clara were actually broke and had spent all the money from the sale of our childhood home on luxury rentals and designer clothes, Hugo dumped Clara overnight, leaving her heartbroken and humiliated. To make matters worse, my mother had signed a terrible lease agreement for their luxury apartment, and without my salary to cover their expenses, they quickly fell behind on their payments. Within months, they were formally evicted from the fancy apartment they had sacrificed our childhood home to obtain. With no money, no home, and all their wealthy friends turning their backs on them, Sophia and Clara were reduced to living in a cramped, run-up motel on the dusty outskirts of the city. Desperate and searching for any way to survive, Sophia heard rumors in the local agricultural community about a mysterious, incredibly wealthy young woman who had purchased the historic Hacienda de la Emperatriz and was hiring staff for the upcoming harvest season. Rumors whispered that the owner was a generous, brilliant woman who paid her workers triple the standard wage and lived like royalty behind the Golden Gates. On a hot afternoon in June, Sophia and Clara decided to walk all the way to the estate, hoping to beg the owner for a job, a small cottage on the property, or even some financial help. They wore dusty, worn-out clothes, the very designer outfits they had bought with the house money, now faded, stained, and smelling of sweat from the long walk under the blazing sun. When they finally reached the magnificent golden gates of my estate, they stood there, panting, looking through the iron bars at the lush green gardens, the sparkling fountains, and the beautiful white mansion in the distance, completely unaware of who owned this paradise. The blazing Seville heat was relentless, but the burning desperation in their hearts was far more painful than any sun. They began to plead with the head of my security team at the gate, begging him to let them speak with the generous senora of the estate. They fell to their knees, crying and claiming they were a respectable family who had fallen on hard times and only needed a small cottage to live in and some humble work. Watching the security cameras from my air-conditioned study, I saw their desperate faces on the screen. I felt no anger, only a cold, clinical sense of justice. I pressed the intercom button and ordered my security team to open the golden gates and allow them to walk up the grand, gravel driveway toward the mansion. Sophia and Clara's eyes widened with hope as the massive gates slowly swung open. They hurried up the driveway, marveling at the luxury that surrounded them, believing that their luck was finally changing and that they would be able to charm the wealthy owner. They stood in front of the grand wooden entrance of the mansion, waiting with bated breath. The heavy oak doors opened, and I stepped out onto the marble terrace. I was wearing an elegant, tailored emerald green silk dress. My hair was styled in perfect waves, and a discreet, multi-million-euro diamond necklace sparkled around my neck. Behind me stood David, my attorney, and Matteo, my chauffeur, both looking at the scene with crossed arms and cold, silent expressions. The moment Sophia and Clara looked up and saw my face, the color was instantly drained from their cheeks. Sophia's mouth fell open, and she stumbled backward, her knees trembling so violently she had to grab Clara's shoulder to keep from falling. Clara gasped, pointing a shaking, dirty finger at me, unable to utter a single coherent word. They looked at my luxurious dress, my diamond necklace, the beautiful mansion, and the loyal staff standing respectfully behind me, trying to reconcile the image of the simple, low-class clerk they had abandoned in the rain with the powerful, wealthy woman standing before them. The absolute shock was paralyzing, a silent storm of shame and disbelief that swept over them under the bright afternoon sun. Sophia was the first to speak, her voice cracking as she forced a fake, trembling smile and took a step forward, extending her arms. "Isabella, my sweet, beautiful daughter. Oh, thank God, it's really you. We have been looking for you everywhere. That note was just a terrible mistake, a joke to teach you some independence. We always loved you, my darling. Look at us. We are your family. Please, you must help us. We have nothing." Clara joined in, crying fake tears and begging me to let them live in one of the mansion's guest rooms, promising they would do whatever I wanted. I looked down at them from the terrace, my expression completely unreadable and cold. I slowly reached into my silk pocket and pulled out the faded, crumpled white envelope containing the eviction note my mother had written 6 months ago. I held it up so they could see it, and in a calm, clear voice that echoed through the courtyard, I read her own words back to her. "There is no room for you here. You are not really part of our future. Don't try to look for us. Get out and find your own way." I folded the paper and looked directly into my mother's terrified eyes. "You told me to find my own way, Sophia, and I did. This beautiful estate, this company, this life, I built all of it with my own hands, the hands you called simple and dirty. You threw me out like trash to chase a life of fake luxury, and now that your lies have ruined you, you come to my gates begging for a room, but just as your note said, there is no room for you here." Sophia fell to her knees on the gravel, sobbing hysterically and begging for mercy, while Clara screamed that I was a heartless monster for treating my own family this way. But I remained completely unmoved. I turned my back on them, nodding to my head of security. The security guards immediately stepped forward, firmly grabbing Sophia and Clara by their arms and escorting them back down the grand driveway, out of the property. As they reached the road, the massive golden gates closed with a heavy metallic click, locking them out of my world forever. They were left standing on the dusty road, looking at the paradise they had lost because of their own greed. Those who humiliate others to elevate themselves will always end up falling from their own pedestal. What did you think of Isabella's journey and the ultimate justice she served to her greedy family? Share your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of truth, triumph, and sweet redemption.